Good morning, y'all. How's it going? I don't really do too many car chronicles, and I was debating on if I even wanted to share this story at all, but it has been on my heart, and I feel like maybe it's time for us to have the conversation. I wasn't sure if I wanted to share it on this channel or create another channel where I'm doing, just talking about things outside of camping and cruising and traveling. But this is a real conversation that I think we should have because it's something that happens in our community, in communities everywhere. It had been heavy on my heart, so I wanted to talk to y'all about it. But let me get situated. Hold on just a second. So, have y'all heard about the social media influencer named, she went by Duchess Dior, and she was dating this guy who she had met when she was a CO at a prison, and he was the prisoner there. And anyway, he got out, they got together and ended up having a child. She had a child, and then they ended up having a child together. Well, anyway, they had found her deceased. So after finding her deceased, they located her vehicle, and the guy unalived himself. After that, they went back and they started looking on their social media. Okay, it was a very toxic relationship. So apparently, she was cheating on him, he was cheating on her. He was very abusive. He even mentioned in the live that he would put hands on her if she did not get out of his life. I'm not victim shaming at all, but she did continue to antagonize him to the point of where, I believe in one of the clips, he even put hands on her on the live. But he kept telling her to leave him alone. If she wanted to go live, to go on her own live or whatever, and or he was going to put hands on her. And the way that he said it, you could tell that this was something that happened often, him putting his hands on her. So, I don't know what it is about this culture. I almost kind of blame the whole Chrisean and Blueface era or whatever, the way they would be abusive toward each other. When the situation happened with Chris Brown and Rihanna, it's like... Now, I'm not advocating abuse at all. I have my own story that I'm going to tell after I talk about this. But the way that Chris Brown was ridiculed, blackballed, treated in the industry after he put hands on Rihanna. But then when Blueface and Chrisean came along, and not that I follow them or anything, because I'm not on any social media at all. Like, I'm not on TikTok, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Facebook. But anyway, just seeing stuff pop up, because at one time they were on all social media, right? So that became like a staple of love. This dysfunction, toxic relationship of them being abusive toward each other, going live in arguments, going live during intimate moments. And it's like, what is happening? What is happening? What has changed that has made this something normal? When did domestic violence become normalized? It was just, after I saw it, it was kind of triggering for me, because I was in an abusive relationship when I was 19 years old. I was actually dating this guy who was 34, way too old to be dating a 19-year-old. But at the time, I didn't really know any better. I mean, I had red flags and things that told me that he was possibly an abuser, very angry person. But I didn't pay attention to the red flags because I grew up around that toxicity. I grew up around dysfunction. I grew up around the poverty mindset. I grew up around abuse. You know, I grew up around that, seeing it. So, and, but anyway, when I was 19, I had moved to California. I was living in Sacramento. And I had met this girl who I thought was a friend of mine's. But we had started hanging out. And she had introduced me to this guy. He was extremely nice in the beginning. But he had someone who was supposed to have been coming to move in with him, a cousin or something that, well, he said it was his cousin. But she was living out of town when I, was coming by and stuff. So when she came back in town, there was an issue with me being there. So he got into a physical altercation with her in front of me, right? But me, not knowing any better, being 19 and him being 34, 35, he convinced me that she was saying something about me, and he basically did that because he was taken up for me. When me, being mature enough, would not have accepted that and would have seen that regardless to what the reason was, she was still a woman that he had put hands on. So anyway, I ended up moving in with him, and the violence didn't start right away. Let me run in the store right quick, and I'll come back and I'll finish the story. Okay, y'all, so I'm back. I started to see certain things, like he was very controlling, very possessive, didn't want me to leave the house. And once I got a job and started working, that's when his true colors started to show. One of the things that I used to do that, I hadn't really mentioned, but I used to rap, Me and my friend had us a little group, and we would be in talent shows and we would rap and everything all the way up until after high school. So, which was one of the reasons why I moved to California, is because I was, thinking I was going to have this career in the performing arts or something, because I had the opportunity to go to Southern Methodist University on a performing arts scholarship, but I passed it up. But anyway, long story short, whenever I have lived in different places, I've lived in New Jersey, I've lived in California, I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in different places. But whenever I have moved somewhere, it's like I always end up meeting someone who has to do with music or something in the music, with music. So when I started working this job, the only reason why he really let me work the job was because his brother's best friend's girlfriend was a supervisor. And the job was, just a little simple job of, this was back in a time when people were receiving food stamps in the mail. So that's what I would do. I would basically just put food stamps into envelopes all day, So it was a job. It was a part-time job, just to get out of the house or whatever. So as I was working this job, I started having a conversation with his brother's best friend who did music. And when he found out that I rapped and he was a singer, he was saying that he was looking for a female to be on a song with him. He had set up a time for us to go to the studio so that we could work on this song. So after I got back home and I told him, this was the first time that he put hands on me. I told him that the guy was wanting me to do a session with him, and he had booked a studio. And he went off. He started calling me all kind of 304s, saying that I was messing around with this dude. Now, this was his brother's best friend. I ended up having to quit the job because it was a problem. Every time I went to work, he was accusing me of messing around with the guy. He was an alcoholic. Later found out that he was also using drugs. We lived in like these townhomes. And they had a garage on them. So there was this lady who he was friends with. He had been gone for a long time. So I had went outside, and he was coming out of her garage, and her eyes, first she came out, and then he came out after her, but her eyes were huge, like bucked out of her head, huge. He came out right after her, and his eyes was bucked out of his head. I have never used crack. I've never smoked crack, but I have been around people who have smoked crack. And one thing about crack, it has a distinctive smell. And they say the smell is what people get addicted to, but I don't know. The smell always made me nauseous. It always made my stomach hurt, but it has like almost like a sweet smell to it. I don't know, but that's what I smelled. I just left and went back home, and then he followed me and started going off on me for catching him smoking crack. He started going off on me, and then he put hands on me again. So by this time, I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? So I had went home to visit. You know, he had convinced me that he was only trying it out because he was selling it and trying to get some money or whatever. I was going home to visit, and I went home on a bus. It was a 36-hour ride on a bus, y'all. But I went on the bus, me and my 2 children. I did have kids at the time. My youngest was 2 and my oldest was 5. So by this time, we had been together almost a year. I'll say I was about 20, because I moved to California when I was 19, but I was probably more like 20, somewhere around there. And when I was there, I was having a conversation with a family member. I won't say who the family member was, but it was a family member who I thought would have given me more support. But this particular family member has been in and out of an abusive relationship for almost 30 years, something like that. So, but at that time was not in an abusive relationship, not in the abusive relationship they're in now. But anyway, I had went to this family member, and I was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, he's putting his hands on me. I really need to get away, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I don't know if this family member thought that I was suggesting that I come live with them. I don't know, but she told me that I was better off staying in California than moving back to Oklahoma. So, as heartbroken as I was just like, well, I don't have no other choice. So I ended up going back. Things were okay for a little while. But anyway, I had a friend that came to visit. He was upset about my friend coming to visit. We had got into an argument. He said that I was acting different around my friend. I don't know. And I had braids in my hair. And I remember he had took my head. He grabbed my head and he just shook my head. Just shook it with the braids. Just shaking my head like that. He put hands on me then while my friend was there. So I ended up calling the police. The police came and everything. They didn't do anything. Domestic violence was, this was back in the 90s. Yeah, it had to be like the early 90s or whatever. And so they didn't do anything to him. I was crying or whatever. My friend ended up just leaving. Well, she didn't even mention nothing about it. When she got up the next day, she acted like she didn't even hear what was going on because she didn't come out and try to help me or anything, which I don't necessarily expect her to, but it was just the way that she got up the next morning, like she didn't hear anything. She didn't know what was going on, so she just left. So I was just feeling like I was just stuck, y'all. I didn't know what I was going to do. The abuse got worse. I had said that I was going to leave. I remember that I was like, I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I left. I had got my kids. I left again. Went back to Oklahoma. I was staying, I think I was staying with my grandmother at the time. He started calling, saying he wouldn't do it anymore, asking me to please come back. His grandmother ended up calling me because his grandmother had came to visit. And, he was on his best behavior when his grandmother was there visiting. And going back a little bit, I remember when I had told his mom, he was just like, I'm so sorry. And she started telling me about how his dad used to abuse her. Everybody knew what was going on, but I never really told anybody. But everybody knew, he never really went off on me in front of family, but I believe everybody knew. So his grandmother was like, well, if you come back, I was like, well, it's a 36-hour bus ride. I just got here and, I don't want to have to take my kids back on that bus again. And she was like, well, I'll send y'all some tickets. So she ended up sending tickets for me and my two kids to fly back up there. So there was a time that my daughter was in Oklahoma with family for the summer. So I was already living with him before my daughter had came back. That's what it was. I had went down there to get my daughter the first time when I had told when I had told this family member about the abuse. I was going down there to get my daughter. And so he never really abused me or went off on me in front of the kids. It was always when we were, after he had been drinking. So anyway, I ended up going back. And as soon as I got off the plane and I saw him, I knew I had made a mistake. I knew that I shouldn't have gone back. After I get back, he didn't tell me before. He waited until after I get back. After I got back, he had moved his drug dealer and his drug dealer's girlfriend and their child into our home. And he was like, well, they were going to be staying there for a little while, and I had to go stay with his father. I had to go live with his father, which his father didn't live too far. But still, I didn't want to have to go live with his dad. And, his dad had a big 2-story home, a 4-bedroom home or whatever. And so it was so awkward because I went to live with his dad. And so I was staying with his dad. I had got me a job. I was working at McDonald's. My kids were in daycare and everything. And so I was staying at his dad's, and every now and then I would go over there, but it wasn't too often. Like, we may go like a week without even talking to each other, but I'm at his dad's house. It was so crazy. When I think about it now, I'm like, that was not even me. Like, that was somebody else. That was, it's like looking at a movie when I think about it, like it wasn't even me. They had a family function, and his sisters and his brother, everybody was there. And I don't know what triggered him, but he went off. And this was the first time that he ever went off on me in front of the family. So I just walked off and went and sat away. The kids were off playing at the park with the other kids. So I don't know if they saw him going off. I don't know, but I just had walked away and went and sat on a bench. And his dad came over there and told me, I didn't have to feel like that I was a part of the family and all of this. And so, I was like, well, I'm just going to stay over here. So I just kind of stayed over there. I don't think his sisters or anybody came and checked on me. When we got back to his dad's house, his dad had a conversation with me, and he told me how he used to put hands on his mom, on this guy's mom when he was young, and he was saying that he was an alcoholic and he had stopped drinking and he had went through AA or whatever. So I was threatening to leave him again, and so I went to AA with him. I started going to AA meetings with him, and it was like all they did was sit around and talk about drinking. I didn't understand. I don't have anything to say about AA. It probably does help some people, but my experience was all they did was sit around and talk about drinking. So I didn't understand how that was going to help. I had moved back and I was working at McDonald's. They had moved out. I was probably stayed with his dad for, I know, a good month or two. Like, I was there for a while. And so when I moved back in, he was tripping about me having a job again, and we had got into it. I had missed a couple days of work. I had called and said that I was in a car accident. So I went back to work, and I remember there was this older white lady that worked there. Everybody was kind of like a family because it was a franchise, and the man and woman who owned the franchise, real lovely people. The owner would come and he would work right alongside us and everything. So even though it was at McDonald's, I still liked having the job. I was like in my early 20s. So, I had got employee of the month and all this stuff. Like, everybody really, really liked me. So I had called into work, said I was in a car accident. So when I went to work, there was this older white lady that was there. And I remember she pulled me to the side and she said, if you don't leave him, he's going to end up killing you. And I was like, huh? And I looked at her and she said, I recognize those marks on you. It's not from a car accident. And if you don't leave him, he's going to end up killing you. So I remember I started crying, and I was saying I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to get out of the situation I was in. The next thing I know, maybe about a week or two later, he ended up going to jail for DUI. And that was my door out. In the beginning, I didn't really see it. I would go visit him and everything, and he was making all these promises about how he was going to do better and all of this kind of stuff. So one day I had called, my kid's father had called. It was Christmas was coming. And mind you, I was working while he was in jail. I was working, trying to keep the bills paid and everything. So my kid's father called, and I was explaining to him that I didn't have any money to get the kids anything for Christmas. So he was like, don't worry about it. I'm going to send you some money, and I'll send the kids some gifts. But anyway, so when I told him, I was like, well, I had spoke to my kid's father, and he said that he's going to send some money for the kids. And he went off. That not send no money to my MFing house. He better not send no money to my house, and this and that. I don't know what it was about that particular conversation. All the times he had talked crazy to me, called me out of my name, all the times that he had put hands on me, it was that conversation where a light bulb went off. I had an aha moment. I don't know if it was because it's one thing to mess with me, but to bring my children in there is something totally different. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot about this. This was after I was working at McDonald's, and he made me quit that job. I was fed up, and I felt like I didn't have no way out. And I remember being in the bathroom and having a bottle of pills. And I was thinking about taking them. And he came into the bathroom with in his hand. And he started loading it in front of me. He was sitting on the toilet. I was sitting on the floor. He started loading it in front of me. And he put it up against my head, and he said, if you ever leave me, I will blow your MFing head. And I remember just breaking down, and I was crying, and he snatched the pills out of my hand. And so he opened up the bathroom, he left out, and my son, who was about 3, maybe 2 or 3 at the time, he came in and he put his arms around me and he hugged me. And I remember I was just crying like, oh God, please help me get out of this situation. And that's when he ended up going to jail right after that. And so, but anyway, when he had mentioned something about him not sitting on money, and I was like, here I am, I'm trying to keep things afloat. I'm trying to pay these bills, working at McDonald's, taking double shifts, trying to do whatever I can in order to keep these bills paid. And you don't want me to get no help? My kids won't have a Christmas if he don't send the money to help me. So at that point, I was done. Okay? I was done. I don't know what. I guess God, gave me the strength. Something clicked in my mind. I started selling everything. So he had a friend, and him and his friend's wife would stop by sometime. I think he had them coming over checking on me. So they would stop by sometime. And so I guess he went back and told him that I was selling the furniture and stuff. So the guy that I had worked with had came over, and he was helping me, move stuff. It wasn't nothing going on between me and the guy. The guy was actually, he wanted the same thing I wanted. Okay. So, he came over and he was helping me move and stuff. So they went back and told him that there was a guy over there when they came over there or whatever. So he called and he was cussing me out and all this stuff. I wasn't worried about it because I had already made my mind up. By this time I was 20, about to be 21. No, I was over 21 because I remember me and my guy friend ended up going to Reno, Nevada. We had took a bus there. It was like a 2-hour drive, and we hung out for the new year. And so I had to be 21 because I remember I was drinking and stuff. But anyway, so I was probably about 21 by this time. And so I sold everything. I sold all the furniture. I sold the car. And I left. Okay. I got up out of there and ended up going back to Oklahoma. I ended up getting a job working for Hertz. I was making good money. I don't know how he found out where I was working. I don't know if I think I was still in touch with his sister, but somehow he ended up calling up there, and I had got on the phone. He was telling me that he had got out. He was sober now, and he wanted for me to come back home. And so I spoke with his mom. I called his mom, and I told his mom, I'm like, I have a lot going for myself right now. I have a good job. I just got me a place. I was like 22, 23. Because I was with him for a couple of years. It took me a couple of years before I finally was able to leave. And she told me, she said, don't come back up here. She said, do not come back. And I really do think that if I would have went back, he probably would have did something to me. I really do believe that. So I didn't go back. That was the last time. I never talked to him again. I stopped answering his phone calls. I got my phone number. I never went back. I'm hoping that this conversation helps someone. Don't stay just because you have children with them. Your children is seeing this. It's not helping your children. If you need help, reach out and get help. Don't be in a situation where somebody ends up taking your life and taking you away from your children. Know that you deserve better. You don't know what type of life you can have if you get out of this cycle of abuse. If you leave this situation, God has something better for you. So please get help. Don't stay. If he hit you once, he will hit you twice. If he disrespects you in front of people and you've let him get away with it, he will do it again. Some guys are just abusers and there's no help for them. But you deserve better. Okay, let me get on off of here. I just wanted to tell y'all that story. I hope everybody has a great day. I wasn't really sure about sharing this story on this channel, but hopefully it helps someone. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.